Alrighty, Grid21 back with another video. And today's video I think would be rather kind of interesting to talk about, as this is something I've never actually covered before. So excuse me in advance if I seem like I'm kind of lost in my thoughts. It's a little difficult to explain things sometimes for me, and so I'm going to try my best to explain to you, and that is why we have off-screen notes to help people like myself. Apologies in advance for the weird haloing effect, as I have a new wide-angle lens, and the way the glass is cut, it does some weird sun flare effect, and I'll be talking about that in a separate video, hopefully after this one. So today's video is basically going to be about how to prepare for a professional photo shoot. Besides streaming and videography and editing and all that, I also occasionally do photo shoots for people, and that is not something that I do very often. And so it's something, as a world of photography, I'm sort of trying to understand and better navigate my way through. And there was some things from this previous photography event that I was at that I felt was worth discussing and might be helpful for somebody who's new like myself about how to prepare, communicate, and present and edit at a particular event. So I'm going to head and maybe just talk about a little bit of the event that I was at, and then sort of talk about some points and things that I thought about while I was going through the whole experience that I wrote down and I'll be referencing occasionally. So I had an organization reach out to me, and they needed some photographs for, basically they were doing some lobbying at a local government building for a particular thing, and they asked me to take some photographs at the event. And they were originally contacted through my dad, who has a lot of references to people for photography things and past photography events that we've done. And being that my dad is not able to do the photography that he used to do, I've sort of taken up a little bit of some of that stuff myself and decided that, you know, he said I could do this event in particular. So it went a lot of back and forth between my dad and this client for a bit, and then finally I jumped into the email and discussed with the client what they were, more specifically on what they want, what were they looking for. And it was basically they just wanted a series of candid shots, a lot of it more for just PR, marketing, advertising type of a thing for this particular organization. And that's, you know, mostly what they wanted. So I would say that the first thing here is basically clear communication for via email or even via phone call. Try to figure out what they want at the event, and then get a, you know, either write down some sort of notes. A notepad is a very viable application on Windows to just jot down some quick notes, you know, to commit to memory, to know what you have to do so you have some idea what's going on. Some events might feel like they're kind of thrown together, in which case it's very hard to, and I can understand it's very hard to plan that particular thing in that particular event and know what you're doing when you actually get there. And so don't be surprised sometimes if you go to events and there really is no particular criteria. You're just given a series of instructions, and you can just do your best to hopefully follow through and give the client the results that they are expecting from you as a photographer. One of the things that I would say that was also really super important is that when you get to the event, sometimes there'll be instances where they'll have security, and in which case I would say, like, pack rather light, only take what you need. So for me in particular, I took my dad's Nikon D7200, and I took a extra battery pack that clips onto the bottom of this. This has 2 SD cards, and actually through the entire event, I did not end up using the second extension battery, which was pretty amazing. It's really power efficient actually as a camera when you think about it. The only lenses that I took for this was I don't remember what the other one is. I know one is a wide-angle lens. I don't know what the millimeter is on it, but there's a 17-50 on this particular camera, and I actually found that that was really the most that I needed for the whole event, which is actually pretty cool. So I took 2 lenses, I took 2 flashes, and the flashes that we use take 4 AA batteries, so I packed a lot of extra batteries. If you're fortunate enough to have flashes with rechargeable batteries, charge your batteries the night before the event. Make sure that they are charged up. Unfortunately, with lithium batteries, they do not hold their charge over time when not in use. I have literally no idea why. If somebody could please explain it in the comments, I would really appreciate it, because it's rather annoying and kind of waste of time, but whatever. So I took those 2 flashes, and then I took a camera charger in case I would have to charge the batteries in the camera which I did not actually. The event was such that and flow into such a way that I just didn't really need to, and that was super helpful. So travel light. Don't try to bring more than what you need. If you're going to do portrait photography, bring some really good lights. I know that a lot of lighting kits are getting smaller, they're getting easier to manage. A lot of things are going the way of LEDs, which is fantastic, because honestly, having big soft boxes, while are awesome and look fantastic when it comes to post editing, in some situations they are just simply not viable. Even in my situation here in my little office space, I actually have to use small camper lights actually to light up my space, and they actually work rather well. But try not to bring more than what you need, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have to pack those all up, and who wants to have a car full of equipment that is just going to be a mess and annoying and such, and also takes more setup time. When you get to the event, I would say definitely make sure that you contact the event coordinator or whoever you spoke with. If it was multiple people, make sure that you get in contact with somebody. I ended up actually arriving at the event and felt kind of lost because I got through security and then there was like no direction after that. Per se, I didn't know what room I was supposed to go to. I wasn't really sure like how I was supposed to go about finding the people I was with. I talked to security and they weren't really too sure either, which is really annoying. So if you're finding yourself lost at the event, just take some time, pull out your cell phone, dial up the person that you were communicating with. I actually ended up with an issue where I didn't have any cell service, so I actually had to tell security, hey, I have to step outdoors for a minute to get cell signal. So that was fun. So don't panic if you don't have cell service. Just go find the nearest window or tell the security if there is security at the event. Conventions might have security. Certain types of buildings, depending on what is, who works there, whatever, may also have security. Generally, most places don't. I mean, you can usually get cell signal everywhere, but if you can't, that's what I would suggest for that. So as I mentioned, when you arrive at the event, contact the person that you're with, and then go ahead and go get your gear set up, get yourself ready, take some test shots. Arrive early. Definitely arrive early. The earlier you can arrive, the better. It means that you are able to calibrate your camera, your white balance, ISO, f-stop, all that good fun stuff way before the event and way before everybody starts showing up, especially if it's has to do with, if you're doing candid shots especially, and the client is waiting for some people or a series of peoples or whatever, what have you. It's really important to know that your camera gear is ready to go, whether it's a video or photography. Generally, you can make a lot of corrections on the fly as you go through because your lighting situation will change based on what room you're in, based on what angle you're in, based on where, for example, I had fluorescent lighting, and fluorescent lighting was kind of in different spots of the room, and so I had to like change my ISO occasionally. I think I ran it more at like 500 ISO, and I don't know, I think it was like a f3.3 f-stop or something like that, somewhere around there. Not really that important at the moment for this video, but just kind of giving an example, I would have to ride the ISO up and down. Not a lot. 500 seemed to work for most of the event, but there were some instances where I went to like a really dark, I went to a hallway and there wasn't really any lighting above. Like there was lighting, but it was rather dark lighting, and so it was difficult to adjust for, so I just kind of quick notched it up. And surprisingly, for as dark as the photograph was, in post I was actually able to do a lot of corrections in that photo to kind of recover it, because I looked at it and I'm like, this looks really dark, and I touched it up and I was like, oh, okay, that looks really good. So it, sometimes even if your image is really dark, if you're shooting in RAW, which is what my dad's camera shoots in, that is a really good file format to shoot in, because it means you can make corrections later on if you have to. As far as dressing for an event, it really depends on what the event is. Sometimes you can just dress as I'm dressed right now, especially if it's at a convention. If it's at a more formal dinner, for example, you might want to dress comfortably. Dress in such a way where you're going to not get too warm as you're running around with the camera, but you're also still appropriately dressed. The event I was at was thankfully more business casual, so So I wore a plaid shirt and corduroy pants, and I did not tuck my shirt in so I could have some more physical movement to get around with the camera, you know, moving around, changing all these angles. I had to do some occasionally, and this is something that is a bit of an annoyance with this particular camera. The screen doesn't flip out, so I had to do like shots like this was like way above my head, and I would say that like a tucked in shirt is just super annoying and really inconvenient. I know it may make you look a little bit more sloppy, but I think people understanding that you're the photographer, they might be a little bit more lenient. I don't know of any place that might have a really strict dress code for something. If there is, then that's really unusual. Generally, you can just get away with some kind of nice plaid shirt, something that looks nice, makes you look good, and which is always really important. I know people would say, well, looks don't matter. Well, in this particular instance, they do. So just for the event. Hi everybody, Future Grid here. I wanted to make a small note. When you have done a photo shoot, it's better not to edit on the same day. That way you won't be burned out. I got home from that particular event and I was really tired. I have found with a lot of field work, and this is something I forgot about field work because I really haven't done this in a very long time, is that field work is really tiring. It's very mentally strenuous. It's very physically strenuous, especially for someone like me that also deals with sensory overload. That's something that I have to, basically from an event, I will have to just kind of sit in sort of a quiet room. So my office with the sound of the computer fans humming is like, it's like white noise to me. So it's very calming. You get yourself, you know, sort of situated when you get home, grab something to eat, unload, put your feet up for a while, let your brain kind of rest to process through the day that you just had. I would say unless you're either A, really hyped up from the event, which is completely understandable, or 2, you're on a strict time limit. Sometimes you have to edit things at the event. My dad and I have actually been at events where we were doing portrait photography and we actually had to edit things on the fly. And in that case, you might want to have at least 2 to 3, if not 4 people at a computer that as soon as you snap that photo, it gets right on the computer, it gets to editing, printed out, delivered to the client. And there's one particular event that we used to do where that scenario was actually a thing, where we had to snap the photo, process, print, and deliver. And so those instances, just understand that you're not always going to have a lot of window of opportunity to rest and recover from the event. You may have to just do a quick, few hours turnaround depending on what the situation is. Generally, I think that I could probably say you could get away with just editing it the next day. In my particular instance, I was fortunate. I was able to edit the photographs, do my processing, do my adjustments I had to make. I ended up shooting more toward the warm side than I wanted to. So I actually ended up doing a lot of temperature correction with the photographs. So other than that, I think that's kind of everything I can think of as far as the event and as far as taking photographs in general. Oh, and also thank the client for the opportunity as well. That's something else I've wanted to mention, in that it's really good for you to thank the client for the opportunity, for the event. Tell them, I look forward to working with you again. And, and in my instance, the client actually offered to, and I have to get this off to them at some point, they offered to post my information on their website and social media and stuff so that other clients could actually come find me for me to do more work and stuff. And that is actually a really good networking opportunity. It doesn't just work in Twitch streaming, it also works in professional spaces, although Twitch streaming is so professional, depending how you look at it. And so it's really important to just thank the client for the time and stuff. Establish when, make sure you write up invoices. That's really important too. Depending on which way you do it, some people do things by the hour, some people do things for the whole event. In my case, I decided to just charge for the whole event. It just seemed more logical at the time for that. There's been other instances where I've done by the hour. And so what your rate is based on experience, and maybe also what the going rate is, making yourself sort of competitive. Don't undercut yourself, because that is a really missed opportunity for you to make this a business if you really choose to do that. This applies to photography, videography, this applies to even Twitch streaming, depending on what the situation is. And so, yeah, especially Twitch streaming in the sense of working with companies that want you to do sponsored events and stuff. Make sure there's some way you can negotiate some sort of price so that you're getting paid the value that you as the providing of a service gets. So when it comes to delivering, perhaps send the invoice first and then send the content. Depending on which way it works for me, I just ended up doing as the photographs and the invoice, and to which I then, sometimes they'll send you like a W-9, sometimes they'll just send you a check. Make sure that you have your address on the invoice. Keep a copy for yourself. So for tax reasons, obviously, you're logging amount that you're making, and you have a copy of all your invoices in physical and both in digital and physical forms as well. Because come tax time, you have to go see a CPA and make sure that you can pull that up and be like, I made this with this particular job. So I think that's it. If not, somebody could probably drop a comment in the comment section below. I hope you guys found this video really helpful and really interesting. It's something I've never really tried to do myself. I was trying to put some better thoughts together. I'm trying to learn how to put my thoughts together better in such a way that it makes more sense to you guys, and I feel like I'm making sense of myself. So the next video I plan to do is hopefully a review / discussing the wide angle lens that I am using on my old Canon Vixia HFS 200. I'd like to actually hopefully use it as a replacement webcam for my Logitech C920. There will probably be a video to come once I get the gear for that, and I will talk about some of the setup processes for that, maybe even a little bit of an OBS tutorial with it. So until then, thank you guys so much. Have an awesome rest of your day. Please, if you want to discuss some more videography and photography stuff, please check out my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/grid21. I stream Tuesday through Saturday, starting at 4 p.m. EST, and sometimes I'll actually start later depending on my day. So I'll usually start around like 5 or so. But just follow the stream, join the conversation, and I love to talk to you and get to know you and answer more questions you might have. So until then, thank you, have a nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys all later. Take care.